This video is sponsored by Squarespace. Squarespace is the all-in-one platform for building your brand and growing your business online. Stand out with a beautiful website, engage with your audience, and sell anything. Your products, content you create, and even your time. At one point, it was believed that fashion was the ultimate expression of identity. But now we live in an era where your outfit and the little profane creature you wear on your jeans are not linked with yourself, but rather performance to others? To appeal to the huzz rather than to appeal to some inner sense of identity. Not to define yourself by your own character and circumstance, but instead your ability to impress a girl who mildly looks like Claro. Grok, what does this mean for the fashion industry?
Guys, why is we calling the boys performative for wanting to be more Asian? I thought we was all getting more Chinese this year.
I smell it like funeral flowers, fresh to death, taste sweet and then sour. Yeah, this one guy thought he had powers. I put him in a stink on the floor like a towel. Blood gushing from his nose, he really need a towel. You know, I'm a player in the game, twin towers. I fuck her for hours. She's sweating on my t-shirt, pillows on the floor cause I don't wanna make her knees hurt.
What's good, everybody? My name is Karsten Craning. I'm a fashion designer, but sometimes I also make YouTube videos as well. And today we are talking about the concept of performance in fashion, and not necessarily performance in how a garment holds up or not, but rather performance in regards to social structures. This has been a hot topic this year for some reason, even though if you consult the graph, you'll see that this has sort of been a stereotype developing for a while. Since the early 2010s, we sort of see this flavor of indie or alternative man being labeled as distrustful for some way or another. And while the main concern was about getting a venereal disease from this sort of character, the main concern about this type of people at this point has evolved to now being centered around the concept of their performance. It's become a real concern apparently. These types of guys are luring young ladies on Hinge dates like sirens into the rocks, with trinkets and delights such as labubus and matcha. And as the archetype itself has evolved, we are also seeing the discourse itself evolving, suggesting a broader cultural and generational change towards the attitudes of authenticity and fashion choices. And I think this whole discussion around performative men goes a lot broader than just these generally thirsty men who are going after girls with wolf cuts, but actually speaks to a broader problem about how young people perceive expressions of personal identity and how that ties to fashion and the fashion industry. But before we get too deeply into that, let's just quickly relay the events surrounding the precarious nature of performative men. Like I said before, while there's this long and venerated history of memes, and indie men in particular being memed on for a variety of reasons, the latest version of indie men being shitted upon has unlocked this new, very interesting form of discourse. What separates this man from the rest of the discourse is also their center of identity. This new sort of generation of indie men are more interested in fashion and expression as a whole, rather than music, art, or other media types being the center of their personality. This new type of man centers dressing and how they appear, rather than being a part of a notable subculture or alternative scene. Past iterations of these indie men that have been sort of memed on were focused on their identity as part of a broader subculture, and then their general consumption patterns were memed upon. But now the general consumption patterns of fashion, music, and literature are seemingly the identity of these new performative men. Very much a living example of John Baudrillard's hyper-reality, but I digress. These men can often be seen rocking either skinny shirts with baggy selvage denim, or baggy long denim and a loose bowler shirt combo. They are often wearing tote bags, labubus, loafers, New York Yankee hat, and their choice in headphone is for accessory rather than auditory excellence. But it's not only the headphones which have become an accessory, even though they're really not supposed to be an accessory, but also what they're reading. Whether it's Joan Didion, bell hooks, or the matcha drinks, or even the Claro or Lana Del Rey they listen to, all items of consumption have now become accessories towards a broader fashion statement, to live into this archetype. But sort of the argument is that these fashion choices aren't an expression of ideals, values, or identity, or even personal self-expression, but rather are choices made purely to impress women, which can be seen as either shallow, desperate, or at worst, disingenuous. While it's definitely true that it's not good to be disingenuous, like if you're pretending to be into feminist literature just to get with women when you clearly actually hate women or disrespect them, that's bad. But the question and discourse doesn't really seem to be just about that, but more broader society shaming these men for having fashion choices that perform or signal to other people that they are clearly wanting to be in a relationship. And you see a lot of younger people, specifically Gen Z and fashion people, because they have this shared, almost newly formed value that identity and fashion should only be formative towards a personal style, and that when people dress performatively to socially signal something, that it's this grand betrayal of personal identity. Which, listen, I can understand to some extent. Fashion is one of the main ways that we express our personal identity on the day-to-day. How we share our interests. It's how we share our backgrounds. It's how we share our personal history, our goals, our ambitions. It seems sort of inauthentic to just use fashion as a sense of performance. The only problem with that is that we are in a surveillance state. So we are all performing all the time. We live in the digital age where everything goes on the internet, and you can't go to Target without being reminded that the government and all other powers take pictures of you all the time. Even when you are just checking out your Fortnite, your iPhone is listening to you and every word that you say, and all that information is being put into a Palantir database where they are carefully combing over that information, where at some point Peter Thiel is going to process that information and make a judgment call about where your soul will stand when he Thanos snaps half of the world's population. That'll be okay, that's actually a good thing. And there are even cameras in the toilets of the bathroom. Now that we have that out of the way, while Gen Z holds this high value on some sort of authentic expression that lies completely separate from others, that's just not how our psychology, sociology, or the structures of our society functions. One of the most profound philosophers, gender theorists, and feminists is Judith Butler. And a huge part of Butler's work has been understanding the interplay of identity and performance. Is that identity is not simply an internal structure of your thoughts, opinions, values, and desires. Your identity is not a reflection of your internal monologue, but rather also what is projected and expressed through your external actions. Identity is not a fixed essence that exists before action, but rather identity is expressed through performance. And performance beckons an audience, and that audience is your family, friends, community, people we admire, and sometimes even people we don't know yet. A common misunderstanding is that if identity is performed, that must make it fake or inauthentic. But Butler rejects this. The performance is more real because it has real-world consequences and show how we interact with people we deem important to us. Our identity, as much as Gen Z probably doesn't like this, is not fixed, isolated, or internal, but rather it is extended into how we interact with society. We have internal desires and values for sure, but they do not equate to our real world actions. We are social creatures meant to show care and affection to others, and that is just much of our identity as our internal monologues and history. It is a very American ideal. I believe that our identity is individual or singular to us, but the truth is our identity is defined in our interactions with others as well. And so the sense of us, which is performative, is what signifies what we are looking to do to complete our identity in social circumstances. So for the case of these performative men who are performing a version of masculinity that signals emotional sensitivity, aesthetic taste, and some other alignments with what they believe will get them with a type of woman they want to be with, that's not necessarily fake or disingenuous just because it's performative. It's showing the identity of how they want to interact and where their priorities are, which obviously their priorities are courting a young lady in some way who aligns to these perceived internal values, and they're trying to express that into reality. What they're doing is expressing their desires and beliefs into the physical world, into their identity. This priority of desire is to be with someone who emotionally completes them in some way. There's nothing fake or disingenuous about that unless they aren't actually who they are saying they are being. It doesn't matter what you think, it matters what you do. And if someone wants a particular type of partner and performs to get that type of partner, that's more authentic than not doing anything and not getting the type of partner you want. And the thing is these types of social structures and performance do not just relate to these performative men that we're talking about today in this video. It also relates to a lot of young women. I see a lot of girls performing in a similar way for Tu Hollis. And no, I don't mean guys who look like Tu Hollis or have the Tu Hollis vibe, but I mean Tu Hollis himself, because it appears he's just given anyone a chance in those DMs.
Yeah, my mom is kind of a legend. Also, yeah, I'm lonely.
She is. And me too.
So, come to LA and let's spark up.
Deals.
But I understand that Gen Z still has this thing about expressing identity, or where they feel that performing or dressing purely to get a romantic interest is below most of them. And unfortunately, I have news for them as well. Everyone is still performing. Maybe you're just not performing to get a romantic interest. Everybody is performing, if it's not for romantic interest, for a particular community in which they aspire. People they admire, artistically or for their ambition, or for their family, or other religious or social circumstances. You can't escape performance because we are physical creatures with social desires. For example, for all the fashion people who really believe that they're above this concept of performance, I know a lot of people in fashion communities tend to be in sub-communities that tend to wear the same brands. And while a way that is part of their identity because it is taste, oftentimes it's also performative because they are trying to signify where they belong in the fashion community and their own values. And a really great example of this is that there are a lot of people who commentate in fashion or who are journalists, and they constantly feel the need to get a fit off or dress up. And while I know that is a part of their personal tastes and passion a lot of times, it's more nuanced than that because it's also performance. Like, I know half of the journalists at Fashion Week love fashion. They're invested in it. It's their personal taste. But Fashion Week is one of the most stressful events you can go to if you're a journalist. You're running everywhere, you're late. And I know most fashion journalists, if they got the choice given the circumstance, would wear sweatpants and sneakers if they could, but they don't because they're trying to signify where they are in the fashion community. It's important to signify that. And so in a way, they are forced to perform even though they're in a very stressful position. That's uncomfortable. At this point, we also got fashion polls. Performative firearms? I don't think your Second Amendment rights should be a fashion statement, but here we are. You think you're different and better than the performative matcha guy for wearing Dior skinny jeans, but you are just trying to impress Noah Dillon when you meet him outside of the Help concert. And listen, this whole discourse on performance is also showing us that performance is more than just clothing choices or what we wear, but also our behaviors. For example, performative reading, as we have seen, which this is all elevated and heightened by social media and the sort of pseudo-surveillance state that we live in. Let's talk about Michel Foucault briefly. Michel Foucault, French philosopher, social theorist, and hypothetically the first in line for the Diddy party. Michel Foucault wrote a lot about how society is shifting towards a surveillance society and how that affects people and their actions. When I'm saying surveillance society, I'm not talking about in a conspiratorial way where you are always getting gang stalked by FBI members on CCTV, but in the way that we live in a surveillance society, in how we are socially surveyed by our peers via online behavior. Foucault explains this in his concept of the panopticon, or as I wish it was called, the pop tropica. A quick example of this: you see, before the internet, people just could do things without the fear of being recorded by some random sovereign citizen. But now people have to deal with the fact that everyone has an iPhone in their pocket and live leak to post things on, which has created a system in which people realize they're constantly under the threat of being recorded and socially shamed. And while this is an extreme example, it causes people to perform in a heightened sense. A more mild example of this is how we have posting habits and patterns on Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok, which we deem as socially acceptable. And therefore, our behavior on how we post online becomes performance. An example of something that can get you shamed in your social behavior online. Some of the boys I know learned this earlier this year when they were liking thirsty reels, which were immediately sent to the group chat. People who are single and ready to mingle may post in one way online, while people who have a partner tend to interact differently on the internet. For example, men who have a girlfriend should hopefully not be liking every girl's story on Instagram, hopefully. And people who care not for romantic interests at this time still perform in how they use social media. Listen, I know some of you guys who would be like, I would never post online for a man or a woman, but look at the way your boy is posting on Twitter for Elon Musk. No, Foucault's Pop Tropica, I mean Panopticon, which was named after a prison designed by Jeremy Bentham in the 18th century, is a circular prison with a central watchtower. Prisoners are in their cells around the edge, always visible to the guard in the tower, but the guard is hidden, so prisoners don't know that they are being watched. The key concept here is the threat of constant visibility puts power over you and causes you to perform in a heightened way. You see, performance becomes really the only available option in the social media cyberscape, and maybe it has always been that way, where we are always being perceived. We are all LARPing. Even the people you think aren't LARPing are LARPing, because LARPing is how we engage with reality and the people around us. What's all in your head or whatever you hold so sacred is not necessarily your identity, because that is metaphysical. The physical is LARPing. And until you bring those metaphysical concepts of what you hold as identity into the physical, then that's when it matters. And when it comes to the fashion industry on all levels is performance. Some people perform because they want to fit into a particular scene or friend group. Others perform because they want to fit in with their peers at their workplace. Other performances are for romance and seduction, and other performances about rebellion. The best designers know that, and they design with performance in mind. Fashion isn't just about performance, but it's a huge part of it. Performance is not bad. It's a core part of being human and identity, and performance can actually be beautiful or sacred. Yukio Miyashima, in his book Confessions of a Mask, talks a lot about performance and identity, and how when we don masks for performance in our behaviors, actions, and the clothes we wear, how inner desires are not always expressed in performance, and this causes a great tension between our inner desire and our outer performance. And though sometimes those things clash, the goal of being human is to hopefully allow all of your inner desire to flow through performance at one point or another. Clothes are still important. They still say a lot about you, whether you paused your video game to be here or where to insert cheesy bread. So if you are going to be performative, make sure you do it well. Let me quickly transition to the sponsor of today's video, Squarespace. As many of you know, besides doing YouTube, I'm also a clothing designer, and Squarespace is integral to me personally for running my business. I'm able to host all of my products with an online store that I built through Squarespace. Squarespace helps me manage my orders, market to my customers, and be able to easily update my website when new products are launched. Whether you sell physical goods, digital content, or services, Squarespace has the tools you need to start selling online. Getting started with Squarespace is easy. All you have to do is select a professionally designed Squarespace website template with options for every use and category. Then customize your look, update content, and add features to fit your needs. Transform any template into your own and stand out online on every device. So whether my customers are coming from mobile or desktop, I know they're still getting the ideal experience and functionality. Easily launch your website and get discovered fast with integrated optimized SEO tools so you show up to more people more often and grow the way you want. Squarespace makes my life easier with its fast and reliable website hosting and design templates, which makes sure I can focus on the things I need to make sure my business is running successfully. Go to squarespace.com for a free trial, and when you're ready to launch, go to squarespace.com/KarstenKroning to save 10% off your first purchase of a website or a domain. Anyway, guys, thank you for watching this video. I hope you all have a wonderful day. Thank you to Squarespace for sponsoring this video. And if you guys want to go check out my website and the clothes I designed, the link is down in the bio. I hope you guys have a wonderful day, and thank you for watching.